Hi, I'm Glenn.
And I'm Mark.
And welcome back to another episode of Masonic Unity, the Right Stuff, Profiles in Masonic Leadership. We are here in the Museum of Masonic Culture at 100 Barrack Street in Trenton, New Jersey. And we are very honored to be joined by Most Worshipful John Bettis, who is the past Grand Master of the Grand Lodge, the Prince Hall affiliated Most Worshipful Grand Lodge in New Jersey. So Most Worshipful, sir, it is a real pleasure to have you with us here on Masonic Unity, the Right Stuff.
Well, it's an honor and a pleasure for me to be invited to join you.
Thank you. Thank you. So for our membership, we wanted to have these chance to sit down together and to talk about your experiences as a Mason, as where you came from, where you think the craft is going. Talk a little bit about what Prince Hall Masonry is. So first off, can you tell us a little bit about what Prince Hall Masonry is?
Well, Prince Hall Masonry is the same as Freemasonry universally.
Mm-hmm.
Our origin might be different than many. And as a matter of fact, any poor historian will tell you that the origin of Masonry in general has often been challenged. But as we know today, through what we call accepted Masonic law, Masonry is considered regular when they can trace its origin back to the Grand Lodge of England. Mm-hmm. A fellow by the name of Prince Hall, who is from historically from Barbados, and who through servitude worked his way to Boston in the 1700s, the mid-1700s, and affiliated himself with 15 brothers, and petitioned the Grand Lodge of England to get a charter to become Masons after, on March the 6th of 1775, they were made Masons by a Irish military group that was stationed in Castle William Island in the Bay of Boston. And that Masonic lodge there, that was under the charge of a fellow by the name of William Holt, I think was his name. I might be wrong, but we may have to check that one.
Okay.
But he was the master of the lodge, and he and his brother in that regiment. It was the 440th Regiment of Foot, I believe, attached to the British Army. Mm-hmm. And they made these, Prince Hall and his 15 comrades, Master Masons. Mm-hmm. And shortly thereafter, their dispensation was only that they could meet and they could march on St. John's Day, and that they could bury their dead Masonically. But they did not have the authority under their dispensation at the time to make other Masons. Prince Hall, for several years thereafter, up until 1789, sent their charitable monies into Grand Lodge of England, as well as petitioned them for a charter. That charter was subsequently delivered to Prince Hall by the brother-in-law of John Hancock, who was the captain of a ship ferrying from England to colonies at that time.
Right.
And so that is the only original charter that I know of existing in these United States, issued by the Grand Lodge.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you know where that's
signed by the Deputy Grand Master.
Okay.
That charter is in a sealed preservation glass, and it's in a vault in the bank in Boston.
Ah, okay.
And when we bring that charter out, which is brought out usually at their annual grand session in the Grand Lodge of Boston, and on what they call reenactment, which is going to be, they do reenactment every other year. of the establishment of their Grand Lodge.
Right.
And a great speech that Prince Hall made at that time in 1789. And whenever that charter leaves the vault, it has an armed person who's usually a former police officer or active police officer of Boston Police Department.
Yeah.
Taking care of it, usually one or two. I know the first time I saw it in 1984 when I was mastering the lodge. The first time I saw it was about 3 or 4 cops, and they had Uzis.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how Prince Hall Freemasonry got started and spread throughout this country as the country evolved and developed, primarily down what is now called Route 1.
Right.
Prince Hall even came to, didn't stop in New York, came on down to Philadelphia and associated himself with Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, made them Masons. You know, Richard Allen, as you may or may not know, is the founder of the African American Episcopal Church.
Right.
And Absalom Jones is the first Grand Master of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
The Grand Lodge there is probably about 205, 206 years old, something like that. And of course, the spread went on down Route 1, and then it took a right turn to go to Ohio.
Right.
So that's how, as the country has evolved and developed, so has Prince Hall Masonry. One little unknown factor is something that I've discovered in history, that usually where there is a AME church or there's a Prince Hall Grand Lodge close or has been. And so that's represented in a movie that was made 20 years ago about a terrible event in Florida called, I think, Mayfield, something like that. But that would be the brief version. I hope it was brief anyway.
Oh yes, most definitely.
So how were you introduced to it? Was it part of the family legacy? Was it?
No, I was raised in a little community in South Pleasantville, New Jersey, called Smith Landing. And in that community, we had the barbershop. The fellow that owned the barbershop was a World War II veteran, and he used his GI Bill to learn to scrap, as well as start certain businesses. And in that barbershop on Saturday mornings, where I went to get my haircut as a kid from age 5, I can recall, gathered every Saturday morning the pillars of the community, the preachers, the deacons, the store owners, the business owners, the guys that own taxi cabs, and stuff like that. And right catty corner across the street was a speakeasy called Cap Burrell's. It's where Han Lot number 16 used to meet.
Okay.
Before it moved elsewhere. But those guys would be in there, barbershop. I'm just a kid, I'm listening, and I know who they are. And they're all important people in the community to me. And they would be discussing politics and the issues of the day. And I can recall them discussing the Korean War, and even in my teen years when Vietnamese War started, when I was in high school. So they were the pillars of the community. And if you wanted to emulate and be like anybody, there was nobody else that we saw. It was better. I mean, one guy ended up being the deputy chief of police.
Wow.
You know. So, and they were also all Prince Hall Masons. I mean, there was a time when you couldn't be a Prince Hall Mason if you couldn't prove that you were an active member of a church. And many of the Masons that started their lodges in the early Prince Hall days here in New Jersey and other states in the Northeast, they had to be, you know, deacons and church preachers and that kind of stuff. So you had to be, and you were a good man then, and they still want to make you better.
Right.
So that's when the interest in it. And I used to hear my mother talk about, in particular, there was a lady who was a district deputy grand matron. Her husband was also a well-known Mason in town, the Green family, and she passed away prematurely. She was the district deputy grand matron. We had moved from over top of the barbershop, the one block over, in the middle of that block. We moved from 301 to 313 in the next street. the church that my great-grandmother founded,
Wow.
Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, is where they had this funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember my mother seeing all the cars were parked all the way down, our street and all of the streets in the intersection. And I remember recall my mother saying, I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. Oh, that's Miss Green's funeral. She was an Eastern Star. She was somebody. Okay.
Nice.
So all around me was this elevation of folk who were affiliated as Masonic Nation in terms of their status. So I grew up and I go into service, come back home, and I start a family, and I still knew the Masons in town and stuff. And I wanted to join, but I was busy getting my family started.
Yeah.
Brought my wife here from Canada.
Right.
And I was going to school tonight on the GI Bill myself and et cetera. So around age 30, my early 30s, I'd been playing in a band for several years. Someone taught me how to play while I was in the service. I've been playing in a band, and the social engagements that go along with that and that culture. And then my wife started raising Cain about that because I was out late at night and she was stuck home with the kids, blah, blah. And so then I kind of cut the band loose, but then I started riding a motorcycle because my uncle returned home. He got me riding a motorcycle. So involved with that culture. And an incident occurred where I was at risk of, by this time I'm a lieutenant of county detectives in the county prosecutor's office.
Wow.
Like the number 2 guy. And this incident could have cost me my job and my family. So I decided I needed some structure in my life because I had left the church because of bad things that were going on there.
Right.
And so I said, I'll see if I can join the Masons. So I went to Honorary Lodge a couple of evenings, and matter of fact, my partner in the detective, in the county detectives, he had joined a couple of years before that, and he sponsored me. And he was a great brother who was he was a mentor to me personally and dealing with personal things as well as Masonically. And matter of fact, we lost him a few years ago too. He was 90-something. But his father was the deputy Grand Master of D.C. D.C. Yeah. So that got me started, and he sponsored my membership in the lodge, and I was impressed with the work that was done through the degrees, et cetera. And so November the 2nd of 78, I was raised. And I've been committed, zealous ever since. And I became very much involved with the ritualistic work, as well as learning all of the history of Masonry in general, as well as Prince Hall Masonry. And I moved up to be master in 84, 85, and had a very successful administration as master of the lodge. When I became master, the lodge was broke, didn't have any money. So when I left office, we had $8,000 in we call it upstairs, and $8,000 in the Craftsman Club Incorporated. Yeah.
Did Ritual come easy to you?
Once I broke the code, once I broke that code, and believe it or not, my youngest daughter, she helped me break the code. When I was studying, I put the book down, she'd go look at it.
I believe it.
Yeah, my youngest daughter. Yeah, she's got a master's degree in mathematics and stuff like that. She's
Impressive.
program engineer.
From breaking that code.
So the ritual work, it did come easy. Once I broke the code, I was gone.
Okay.
I was gone. So,
That's great.
and when I first joined the lodge, they were in the process of building an addition on the building. And like I said, I worked in the prosecutor's office, which was housed in the Guarantee Bank in Atlantic City. And I was friends with the guy who owned the bank, who was also the mayor of Atlantic City. They were talking about going to Boardwalk Bank, where we had banked since we existed. They wouldn't give them a loan. So I ran my mouth. The next thing I know, I'm chairman of the board of trustees.
Of course. Isn't that
Brand new
always
master mason. I don't even think I had we have something called proficiency. You have to do proficiency in each degree. You guys probably have the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think I had shown proficiency yet. Next thing I know, I'm the chairman of the trustees. So we got in charge. We raised the guy at the bank said, look, you raised $10,000 in 3 months, and I'll give you guys a $100,000 loan.
Wow.
So we raffled off a car. Guess who won the car? A lady who was the past grand working matron of DC, who had moved to Pleasantville.
Wow.
Yeah. And she ended up becoming an honorary member of our chapter on my recommendation. So, of our Eastern Star chapter.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Impressive.
So, but my work in the Blue Lodge, I ended up came out of the chair, and I was district lecturer, and I had been working in the OES also, and did a lot of degree work in the OES, and I was district lecturer in the Blue Lodge. 2 years prior to that, I was the grand district lecturer in the Eastern Star, and then I was assistant grand lecturer in the Eastern Star.
Okay.
While being district lecturer. I'd open my briefcase and all the collars and aprons.
One guy. What meeting you're going to?
One guy saw me one night, Brother Scott, I'll never forget it. He said, "You got too many collars." And it made me think about it. I said, maybe I did. So that's how committed I was. I mean, I was never home. The kids said, "Oh, we see Dad on." The kids talk about it today. They said, "We only saw Dad when we were toddlers on Wednesdays and weekends."
Yeah.
So the experience of being worshipful master was great, and we had to do some extra work because of things that had gone on before. But we had a good lodge. Whenever there was an issue or a problem, the members of the lodge, even if they didn't come around regular, when we started building the addition, all of a sudden, people started showing up that you hadn't seen.
Yeah.
You know? And in my limited time, because I was only there, 6 or 7 years before I was master,
Right.
but I hadn't seen them around.
Right.
And when we started the construction, putting an addition on the building, people going down the road, we're going to stop it. And our membership increased.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to do at least 2, sometimes 3 classes a year.
Wow.
Yeah, we jumped from like 80 or 90 to like 130, you know. So over a couple of years there, so it was great. And I know when I first became a Master Mason, our district deputy Grand Master was a candidate for Junior Grand Warden. And he asked me to go to Newark and take care of his hospitality suite.
Nice.
And I agreed to do it. I didn't go in the session, but I had to take care of the suite, you know, the refreshments, the adult beverages and food and stuff like that. Well, he did not win the election, but the guy that was the Grand Master was leaving office. We just buried him a couple of months ago. His name was Ivory Buck Jr. I didn't get into the session long enough to see him preside. And I was like blown away.
Yeah.
I was blown away to see him preside over the Grand Lodge deliberation. It was awesome. It was awesome. Matter of fact, that was the last session that we had in that building. because one of our members had a heat stroke and died.
Wow.
A former lecturer.
Wow.
Brother Abe Jones was his name. He was also a real strong teacher. Our lodge we had a reputation for ritualistic work. Mm-hmm. If you didn't know the open ceremony, for instance, if you didn't have a word, nobody was going to give you. You weren't allowed to have a book open. Mm-hmm. And you stand there until you find that word. And after a while, it might give you one word. Mm-hmm. So it was very competitive for seats on the new administrations.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of zeal for the work. I had a problem when I was senior deacon. The master's supposed to give light at every meeting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And usually that light was master reading from the Constitution. Now, in those days, when you didn't get a Constitution, or you got a ritual with your fee, your initiation fee, but didn't get a Constitution or a monitor. So I asked for a copy of the Constitution. Boy, did I start a ruckus. So the result of that request was I was told, no, you don't get to look at that book until you get these. I was getting ready to go to the South. So I spoke to the district deputy Grand Master at the time. He spoke to the Grand Master. Next thing I know, the Grand Master put out an order in the whole state. Everybody will get a copy of the Constitution and the monitor.
Yeah, good.
And
Makes sense.
You can charge them for it in the fee.
Yeah.
But everybody gets a copy.
Yeah.
So that was a good and positive thing, because I've said to myself one night, that either this guy can't read, or the people that wrote this stuff was illiterate. Mm-hmm. The people that wrote the stuff were not illiterate. These were brilliant Masons that put all of this work ahead of us. And then the nice thing about it is I eventually found out that, although we weren't together, there was no difference in the work. Somebody was talking to somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
There was no real difference in the work. So, but that was a good lodge experience.
Yeah. Now you talked about some mentors you've had. Tell us a little bit about what your mentors did for you, how they brought you along, and just your thoughts as to giving some mentoring back to the younger Masons.
Well, we had our guys, the mentors that we had in our lodge. There was a culture there that if the master asked you to do something, you wanted that. How high do you want me to jump?
Yeah.
I mean, it was that much strong discipline. Matter of fact, discipline was one of the words in my motto when I was Grand Master. Mm-hmm. There was discipline, which I had no problem with, because I was in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. I was in the Strategic Air Command, Security Police. That's like Marine Corps in military service. Mm-hmm. You're the ground fighters so that the planes can get in the air. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's an attack of the planes on the ground. That's the discipline. We were the military part of the Air Force. Mm-hmm. Everybody thought the Air Force was like sloppy, right, because they worked on the plane with
golfers, stuff like that.
Yeah. But I was in the SAC, Strategic Air Command, on the Chappie James and Curtis LeMay.
Wow.
And you got a toe there. And we were very militaristic, rigid, spit shine shoes, razor sharp. And so that was my background anyway. So I didn't have a problem. I understood the chain of command and the military, the aspect. Much of Masonry is military based, so that was easy for me, and I had no problem. And we had a guy named Kimbrough. You don't want him on your back. He was Grand Pilot Emeritus, and Jones I mentioned earlier, and Harvey, Cuff Mills. These were the guys that made sure that everything was done right and in order, in good order. Harvey had a photographic memory. He was a taxi cab driver.
Yeah.
So while he's waiting for a fare, he's in his book. And he knew our ritual,
Yeah.
word for word, back cover to back,
Yeah.
as well as he knew the borough service monitor, and both house, Eastern Star and Blue Lodge.
Yeah.
And he was, if you did good work, he would applaud you. If you did bad work, he put you to the side and tell you where you went wrong.
Yeah.
So those guys were mentors in terms of the Masonic ritualistic work. I had some out of the order mentors in terms of leadership and administrative skills. I had the good fortune to know a guy named Don Patterson in law enforcement who was a homicide captain in Philadelphia. Ended up working for Caesars, I think. He ended up in the casino down there. Then I had a fellow who was named Al Cade, who was a brigadier general, retired.
Wow.
Who was the head of Caesars at one time.
Okay.
And I met them through I left law enforcement in 1980 and got involved in job training and economic development programs for state, federal money and stuff. At one time I was controlling $20 million a year. And so I got really involved with a lot of corporate people. Learned a few things from them about leadership and what you need to do to encourage others to buy into your program.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So you got to develop the program so that they can buy into it because they have an interest. And the other thing is you got to lead by example. We had a problem now. The basement floor was leaking in the building. This was around Worshipful Master. And what we had to do was dig up the side of the building. We've done that a couple times over the years, actually. But this happened with me, and my uncle just happened to have a backhoe service. So I got him over there, and he brought the backhoe and he dug up all the way down to the footing of the building. And the hole was deep. So all the guys were standing around. We had to get in there and tar the blocks and the concrete and stuff. So I jumped in the hole first.
Yep.
That was the smartest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
Because the guy said, "Okay, Worshipful Master, come on, get out of there." And I would go. But they insisted I come out, and the guys got down there and tarred that footing foundation. So lead by example.
Yeah, that's a wonderful
there. And there was another fellow from another lodge who was never a past master because his job wouldn't permit it. But he was another mentor and wise counsel when it came to interpersonal relations. Actually, it was two of them, both of them were different lodges. Hill was one. He was a great advisor and mentor in helping me to develop it, particularly when I decided I wanted to run the junior grand award. But there was another older guy named George Barron. And I had a habit of speaking over people's heads, particularly when I became a lecturer. I used to hold schools of instruction 2 Saturdays a month when I was a district lecturer. And he says, "The stuff you got is good, but you got to break it down to a different level." Yeah, I went to an associate degree, two bachelor degrees and master's degree, and I was being too intellectual.
Right.
What they used to criticize Obama for being professorial. I guess I was still professorial. But anyway, so he told me, he said, "Look, your stuff is good, your delivery is good, but the words you're using, you need to break things down to these guys so they can relate and understand it." So that was something that I learned, and hopefully I improved and tried to take that when I became Grandmaster. So, but those guys, those people were mentors that helped me to develop a leadership style, which was little rigid, very rigid.
Right.
Some people I know
Rigid
hate-
or disciplined?
Rigid.
Okay.
Well, depending on who you talk to.
That's true, yeah.
I say discipline, and particularly when I was Grand Master, because the gentleman that preceded me as Grand Master was one of the greatest people you ever want to meet. He was a devout Christian, a loving guy, but he didn't really want to be Grand Master. He was a bishop with several churches. He just wanted to build churches, you know.
Yeah.
And so, and he had a generous demeanor and humble, and so the brother took advantage. Anything they wanted. I want to be a regular for so-and-so, whether you're qualified or not. He can point them. So this is the culture I was handed,
Yeah.
you know, and people were just breaking protocols, and there was no corrective method, there was no corrective plan to keep us where we should be. I mean, we have a protocol manual, and it was being violated on a regular basis. I'm the Deputy Grand Master. Deputy Grand Master's job is to be the bad guy.
Right.
You know, just like this assistant principal in the school.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he's to be the good, because
Yeah.
the Grand Master always has to be the good guy.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. So I was probably, in some people's mind, I'm sure I was too diligent in pursuing that responsibility, because I knew I was going to get what was left to have to deal with, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but it's just different styles, different people. Some folk think you should be a popularist, and it's good to be popular, but it's better to be respected.
Yes.
Most definitely.
You know.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so everybody wants to be loved, and look, let's call a spade. If you pursue the office of Most Worshipful Grand Master, you got to have an ego, and sometimes that ego can get out of control, especially when there's action and emotions and stuff like that. But it's a journey. And it's a journey, and you gotta have fidelity. You gotta be how do you say? You have to persevere. You have to deal with people who are envious or jealous of whatever you achieve or trying to achieve, but that's the negative side. The positive side is so much more enjoyable when you accomplish things, and that's the blessing.
Yeah,
that's the blessing. When you accomplish things, you develop lifelong friendships through fellowship and traveling and moving around. But perseverance. I think I was nominated once. That was to test the waters on the advice of Brother Hill. I was Grand Patron at that time.
Right.
And then I ran 2 more times. But when I ran for Rio, the guy that beat me, I thought I was going to be the next guy, because usually that's the way it happens.
Yeah,
right.
Then out of nowhere, some of my nemesis had got the bishop. He never ran a campaign, never said he was running. They just nominated him. And that's North Jersey, 6th, 7th district.
Okay.
70% of the vote.
Wow.
And I didn't get it. Something similar happened to Most Worshipful Oglesby. When the North, if they don't like you, and look, we come from small district, but we are solid.
Yeah.
We are Masonically solid when it comes to Masonic dogma, ritualistic work, knowledge of Constitution, traditions, and customs. We are solid, and so you go to North Jersey to campaign and say, "Oh, who's this guy?" So it was not easy, and I almost got discouraged. But I prayed on it for a year and a half, and then in January of the next cycle, it's a 2-year cycle, I just quietly went around to lodge bounced
Yeah.
district to district.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, I was elected by probably the largest margin
Yeah.
in recent history.
Yeah.
Only Arthur Crawford walked in, nobody even ran against him.
Right.
He was
Right.
whose footsteps I tried to follow.
Yeah. Impressive.
Yeah. And he was a mentor too. That's Worshipful Crawford. He grabbed me when I was he was grand patron. And he saw me do some starting free work.
Mm-hmm.
Grab me. Stay close.
Yeah. That's impressive.
Yeah. So my experience as grand patron, working with the ladies, well prepared me also for Grandmaster and also for President of the Conference Grandmasters, which I'm the only past Grandmaster, first past Grandmaster, like my successor was also a past Grandmaster.
Yeah.
So there's so many positive things when you reflect the negative stuff that you had experienced and go through, diminishes with time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is so important is for anybody who knows anything that they can share with somebody else needs to share it. In other words, we need to get back to teaching. Teaching, schools of instruction, stuff like that. We go to district meeting and the district grand lecturer gets up and gives a dissertation on esoteric Masonry. Nobody's supposed to do it. It's supposed to be teaching. They're ritual. But now everybody goes on the internet, gets some document off of him, written by somebody who nobody knows, and they're bringing it into the craft and read it.
Yeah. No bibliography, no source, and they give a nice clap,
Right.
because it sounded good. It might be about cats and dogs fighting or something. So it's the change. Too much of the leadership in Masonry has become replaced with popularism. And popularism is not going to prepare the leadership people to deal with crisis, deal with problems. You got leadership has to be larger development. Ritualistic work is fine. And the guys that are young and got those memories, they can still do that.
Right.
But there comes a time, I think, in the Masonic journey, a Masonic career, protected for those who desire to ascend to the Oriental chair, that you got to let that degree work go. Let the younger guys do that. Let the other people that you appointed do that. We had a grandmaster, who was focused on ritualistic work when he should have been focusing on being the CEO of the corporation.
Right.
And you can know all ritualistic work in the world, but if you don't know how to lead the company, so it doesn't get in trouble or get it out of trouble.
Right.
You're not doing the service that you swore you would do.
Right.
So at the end of the day, regardless of what the position is in the organization, we have membership in every house, Scottish and New York, right? And your work has to have a vision that the members can embrace, and that will have a conclusion of truth, knowledge, and happiness. These should be of a journey in the leadership role. Truth, knowledge, and happiness. And I believe that last one, happiness, is somewhere near the end of the restoration ceremonies that we both embrace. Am I correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Because happiness is important, because then there's no conflict and there's no trouble among the craft.
Yep.
Because then we start this thing because there was confusion among the craft. Did we not?
Yep.
If there's no confusion and trouble among the craft, peace and harmony prevails. And the building of not only King Solomon's temple, but the Masonic temple shall be completed in the eyes of the Almighty.
Wow.
Powerful words.
Definitely. Very sublime. I would be remiss not to ask you about some of your accomplishments as Grand Master.
Well, the one that I'm most proud of is right there. It's funny how the right person at the right place at the right time kind of comes together. What do they call it? They call that not destiny, but fate. Is it fate or is it destiny?
Serendipity.
Serendipity is where I was.
But when I was Deputy Grand Master, I was in a recreation vehicle shop, getting a hitch put on my 98 Oldsmobile,
Right.
so I could go to Florida and tow my bike,
Right.
the bike week. And one of your members, never forgetting, tall, thin fella, you could call his name, Stroud, long hair, he was working in the shop.
Okay.
And he said, "You Brother Bettis?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I've been trying to get in touch with you because Wayne Hackney wants to talk to you." I gave him my phone. And I knew Wayne. Wayne was Grand Master. And Wayne called me and says he had something called Unity Day coming, and he wanted to invite the Prince Hall Grand Master to come. And so I put him in touch with Bishop Johnson, and Bishop called me and told me, "Hey, we're invited to Unity Day. We can take 3 people." So I said, "Well, why don't you take the Grand Matron, the Time, and the Grand Secretary?" Because they were married. Jimmy Birchwood.
Right.
Yeah. You got the Grand Secretary. Take the Grand Secretary and the Grand Women Matron, who at that time was Carolyn Hayes Simmons, and Brother Simmons was her husband, was secretary. And to take them, and you guys just let me know how it was, you know, because he was going to let me go. So that's how that got started, and how the discussion and the stuff got started. Hackney went out of office, and whoever followed him didn't pick up the ball. And there, anyway, the energy or the movement there was kind of dimmed. And then when I became Grand Master, Dave Chase called me, and we sat down, met, cabinets, over some great meals, great fellowship.
Yeah.
And we met several times, and we talked about the fundamentals of Freemasonry in Prince Hall and Grand Lodge, New Jersey. They just wanted to be some assurance that they were all the same,
Right.
You know? And things like, you know, recognition of regularity and traditions, customs, usages, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so there was a comfort level that similar, if not duplicative. And we talked about the ritual, and so then we began to find out that somebody was talking to somebody over these years. And so that's how that and what that ended up to be, as you know, the signing of the mutual recognition compact, and also what wasn't really challenging. We had to deal with this unwritten rule that the oldest recognizes the youngest. The oldest has to come to the youngest Grand Lodge has to come to the oldest body to request recognition. Okay, so then we had, okay, well, what's the basis of that rule? Who's got a charter?
Yeah.
Who has a charter that can trace it back to Grand Lodge? I can trace my lineage back to Grand Lodge. Okay, so that rule went away.
Yep.
And then and the greatest part of the discussion and debate was not only Masonically enlightening, but intellectually inspiring, that we came to the conclusion that history teaches us that neither institution or organization is superior to the other.
Very true.
So once you come to that agreement, now you're dealing with the concept of mutual.
You're on the level.
Yep. Very true.
All right. Particularly when you embrace the same dogma.
Yep.
So that was very good, and I really miss Dave. I can't tell you the fellowship, the friendship, not fellowship. We're talking about friendship.
Yeah.
Lifelong friendship. Larry and I talk all the time. I just don't know why he don't ride his motorcycle. About the reference that whose was bigger, which bike was bigger than the other bike.
What kind of bike do you have now?
I got a trike now.
Trike,
But you know, you remember the picture on the magazine?
Definitely.
And everybody was messing with Larry. So Larry, how come his is bigger than yours? Anyway, which was not true. They're the same. They were the same. But actually, his was a higher model than mine in the order. But
well, I must tell you that the compact signing is especially memorable for me because I was Worshipful Master of Cincinnati Lodge, Morristown, when the compact was signed.
I remember.
Yeah, and I got a phone call from Most Worshipful Brother Chase at the time, who asked me to go to Thurian Lodge in Morristown. And so I attended their lodge meeting and one of their degrees, and it was wonderful. It was like being home with family.
Yeah.
That always has
If I
a place in my heart.
recall, your lodge and Keystone was trying to compete for the first visitation. You guys were competing for that. And Michael, what's his name? Michael was the master of Keystone at the time, which is of course Hackney's Lodge.
Yeah.
But
I think we won.
You were asking about the greatest moments. That day that we signed that compact, I'll never forget it. It's like remembering where you were when Kennedy was shot, unfortunately. But that day that was really one of the high points of my life. And the speech that I made that was not written was often extemporaneously. And I think it was probably the greatest speech I ever made in my life.
It was impressive. I remember being there.
I remember this speech. I think it was the greatest speech I ever made in my life. And then when I was finished, all of the past Grand Masters, Prince Hall past Grand Masters, surrounded me on the ship. And I thought I did something wrong. I said, oh my God, what's going to happen? I mean, when all the past grandmasters that were there, when they come at you, you know, I thought I'd done something wrong, and I had. They were just giving me their commendation. That was a job well done, and I'll never forget that. But other accomplishments was establishing, or getting the Grand Lodge to agree to establish, which they did 2 years later, was our foundation and our research lodge.
Research lodge. Interesting.
Yeah, it was provided for in the Constitution. We just never did it.
Okay.
And after I came here, I said, okay, I'll take care of that, the foundation, and also getting the Grand Lodge and the Eastern Star to give us permission to get rid of some property that we had down in Powell's Grove that we were trying to develop for, 50 years. So we couldn't get it done because of the soil issues and other restrictions. So, but the money from that sale was money that we used to start our foundation. And the foundation had some down years and some not so good years, and so our current grandmasters revived that, which I think is something that we really need to do. And not the fellow that followed me, but the next grandmaster did take those items that I left on the table and make them come to fruition. So we're proud of those accomplishments. We're also proud of the fact that we established in support of our instruction, ritualistic instruction. We had finished up some work that was started by past Grandmaster Nelson, which was called our education and training program. We went into greater depth. Okay. In addition to the examination for proficiency rather, we set up a training program, and actually the program was written by his lecturer, but it had never been approved by the Grand Lodge or the custodians of the work. Okay. And so it had some controversial pieces in there. The guy was really brilliant. He was a brilliant guy, that Grand Lecturer. But he was totally independent and worked by himself. So we took his work, turned it over to the custodians of the work, and they came back with the best of that work. And we instituted it as part of our training for schools of instruction and at the lodge level, not just the district level. So that was an accomplishment, getting that done. The other thing was the online signing of vouchers. Okay. For finance. Yeah. We had our fiscal officers were making financial decisions that were not exactly, let's say, permissible, put it that way. We developed a budget also that made sense, because we have so many entities, the Temple Association, we have the Development Corporation, the E.P. Bowser Project, that's the housing project we have in Newark, and then we had another 501c corporation called Prince Hall Corporation. And so the fiscal officers from the Grand Lodge or the fiscal officers were all those entities. Okay. And they would just write checks from different accounts, whatever they wanted to do. So the senior warden and I were able to set up a system where we could go online and the vouchers can be approved by the Grand Master. Unfortunately, that didn't stay in effect long, because it wasn't followed through by the successors. But that was a system that needed to happen, because one of the first things I did was I brought in an external auditor. First time that was ever done. Yeah. And then I had a special session on results of their work. And I offered the fiscal officers emeritus status that they would just resign. They didn't. and he got reelected. Okay, so, but things, that happens. It happens. The best thing that can come out of that is that it should be a lesson to the craft about this is a business.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a fraternity, but it's also a business. And it's a big business, millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So it has to be, treated that way. So you got to, particularly when you're asking the brothers for assessments.
Yeah, most definitely.
There's 4 assessments that deal with this, that deal with that. It needs to be, fiscal accountability is just a must. And it's got to be transparent. It has to be transparent. So those are some of the accomplishments, and we've tried to bring some discipline and some order back into the organization. We had some pretty strong cliques, and folk that thought that they decided who the Grand Order was going to be because they had the numbers and stuff like that. So we just had to show them that the bad side of that culture. That how that culture is just not. It does not support unification of the craft.
Right.
It divides the craft. Yeah. When you think you're better than this one because you have the numbers. There's something that I learned from when I was Grand Patron from my grandworthy matron. And she told me, she said, there is something called tyranny of the majority. Just because you have the numbers and you are the majority, you can commit tyranny against the minority. Yeah. Unfortunately, there are certain political institutions where that has been turned into something called the supermajority, which causes a problem in our government. But it's a good concept that just because you have the numbers and you have the vote, that you shouldn't use that to bully where you want and bully the outcomes of folk who have, you have a vote. The upright masonry is a deliberative body. And the leaders get their power from the members. And you got to earn the trust of those members every day. You got to remember, Grandmaster's got a lot of power, written and unwritten. You got to remember, even when you're Grandmaster, you got to respect people who don't agree with you. Right. Okay. And your cause may be just, your purpose may be honorable, but happiness is still what we want. And it's peace and harmony. When you have peace and harmony, you get things done with the group. One person can't do it all. And you might be philosophically right, you might be morally right, ethically right, organizationally right, and you have a fancy mission statement, all that. But if folks don't buy into it, you're going to be there by yourself. So.
We've talked about the past, talked about the present. Where do you see the future of Freemasonry in your perspective? Where is Freemasonry going in the future?
That is my greatest fear. I continue to see at the national and state level, in all of the houses, a level of arrogance that is just unsustainable. I was sharing with Mark about when you were fixing the machine there. I was sharing with Mark about Prince Hall Shrine. I'm concerned about the dictatorial leadership that's we've had to deal with from time to time. And if we operate under the assumption that even in that particular organization, everybody's a Mason, we have a problem. We understand that it's an organization that's losing membership, but as you lose members, you lose money because you don't have the per capita taxes coming in, and that's what they operate on. So, when you double the per capita tax, 100% per capita tax, $20. No, I need money. I'm making 40 because I have the power to do that. We're not in session, so people don't get to vote, and Scott is right. Everything comes downhill. Well, a few years ago, Solomon was double the capital taxes. Some of us can afford it. A lot of the younger people, it gets to be too much. We say we want to build our membership. So what are we doing to make our presence known in the community? First, when you lose your numbers, you lose your participation, you lose your money, you lose your activity in the community so that people can see your work and want to become a part of it. So that's just it's just not a starter when that occurs. And folks that you do have start to dwindle away. Time to write that check for your dues. I don't like what they're doing. I'm not gonna. And if you don't, only the people who have positions in offices. So what it seems that the leaders are countering that situation by appointing more people to positions that don't exist. They don't exist. They're not necessary. So then you look up, in the Grand Lodge, you look up, all you're doing is spending the per capita taxes buying collars and aprons for assistants to a position that are not even in the book. So you're building your immediate company, but your distant company, which is where the work lies, which is where your resource lies, where your new and young ideas exist. You're frustrating them. I was in a meeting, somebody thought, oh, this guy's a white virtual so. I said, what? What? You gotta be kidding me. This guy, I haven't seen him in 3 years, Anyway, so I would not want, just as a personal integrity, and any good Mason who believes in our teachings, I would not want to get a position that I did not earn.
Yep, makes sense.
I would not want to be given a responsibility that I've not been prepared for. I have neither the training nor the qualifications, either by experience or potential. I wouldn't want that. If a leader asks me to do a job, if I think I have the ability to do it and the resources to do it, I'll accept it. But if I don't, I'm not going to accept it. I don't think I have the juice for that. And too often people are interested in the title, and when it comes time to do the work, they've not prepared themselves, nor have they gone ask for help. And then when they get caught in a jam and you try to help them, they push you back. So, not all, but some people. Too many. then occasionally you'll get the guy who's ambitious and wants to try, but he'll listen to wise counsel.
Yeah.
An attentive ear. Yeah. So these are the kind of things I think that impact our membership issue. I wish I had the answer to membership because that's a universal problem. I've had many I served as the president of the Conference of Grand Masters from 2014 to 18, and had many conversations with our national leaders, and even established a membership committee, which didn't do much, to try to develop some strategies for the Grand Lodge to embrace to address the membership issue.
Right.
You know, and I don't see. There is some great work going on in our Supreme Council. We have a sovereign grant commander who is a visionary, and he knows that membership is critical, and he has developed strategies to inspire and generate. Matter of fact, he and Gladly were very close, and they shared a lot of ideas and thoughts together on where that. So I do see some hope there in the membership resolution. It seems to be an equation that escapes most Masonic leaders.
It's across the board.
It's a universal problem. Don't know. But then again, in the African American community, the Elks has been growing for the last 20 years. The Elks have been growing.
Interesting.
Getting bigger and bigger. But I don't get it. I don't know what they're doing. And they just changed leaders too. But they've been growing.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I'm looking at this. But then the Greek letter organizations are dying out too.
Right.
Yeah. And they go for big money.
Yeah.
They're
Most
all,
definitely.
they're all college graduates. You know? When they have their convention, their registration is $300-400.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know what's your registration?
For Grand Lodge, I think it's, I don't know, it's a couple $100.
Yeah. Okay. We're not there, but I think we're I think we're somewhere around 125.
Yeah. That's
somewhere.
probably around the same.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But that's going to go up just because of we work on both the convention committees for our Grand Lodge and the Grand Chapter, and we've been told, and also on the for the Conference of Grand Masters, and we've been doing a lot of negotiations countrywide for the Conference of Grand Masters in every place with food and beverage metals. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's because of the supply chain issues due to COVID-19. So they tell us that some of the prices are like off the chain.
Yeah.
So much so that the conference decided not to have an in-person session in 22. They're going to go virtual.
Okay.
So.
Most worshipful, sir, it's been a real pleasure to have you here. Is there anything you want to pass on to our viewers before we close out?
I hope that I specifically answered your
queries
to the point where the viewers would have an interest, and hopefully we provided something for the members, Prince Hall Masons, wherever situated in this world, to think about.
Yeah.
Because the institution, I fear, is on a downturn, and it has been. I've been in for 44 years.
Yeah.
The numbers are going down and down and down. Personally, my zeal has not waned. I still work
that's for sure.
Throughout the organization, everywhere, where they'll have me. You're not always welcome just because you used to be,
Right.
But the other factor is that you just got to be willing to learn, and continue to learn and teach.
Yeah.
if you know something that's going to help somebody deal with something and you know it, everybody wants to be a past master. The word master means teacher.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Definitely. Well, from our name, you know, we talk about Masonic unity and firmly believe Masonic unity in our own organizations, but across all of the organizations.
of course.
So it's been a real pleasure to spend some time here with you. And Mark,
All right, time to take it away.
take it away.
If you enjoyed this video as much as we have, please subscribe down below.
Thanks and take care. We'll see you
Thank you
next
for having
time.
me, guys.
See you all later.
Bye-bye.